So it's a great pleasure to welcome you all to our conference on the futures of Marx, organized by the Center for Post-Kantian Philosophy, the Center for Social Critique, and the Volksbühne am Rosa-Luxemburg-Platz. I'm very excited to see you all here, and I'm very much looking forward to the next 2 days. I'm sorry for the slight delay. We had some technical issues, but they are now fixed. So, for a long time, Marx was regarded in academic philosophy, no less than in the general discussion, as an author of the past, a name without a future. Of course, there have always been parts of philosophy and critical theory in particular that haven't completely given up on him. And of course, there is a leftist public discussion that has never completely forgotten about the insights of Marx's philosophy. But the intensifying crisis of global capitalism, the escalating climate crisis, and the post-colonial discussion have brought Marx back into the critical consciousness of the present in a much broader way, not limited to self-identified leftists. At the same time, academic philosophy has rediscovered Marx as a crucial author in much broader fashion, not limited to the continental discussion in general or critical theory in particular. Rather, there is a new interest in Marx that draws on a greater diversity of traditions and also broadens the scope of philosophical problems and issues that we can hope to explore with the help of Marxist insights. It is this greater diversity and the fresh take it allows that we want to explore at this conference. In this sense, we are not simply interested in returning to Marx in the sense of retrieving some status quo ante that we once had reached and that was lost for some decades. Rather, what we are interested in is redisclosing a greater depth and complexity in Marx's thinking and writing, guided by new problems, new questions, and new crises. Our intent is thus not merely a reactualization in exploring, it is rather exploring the futures of the critical endeavor that Marx started and that we want to continue in our own ways. Is this a little bit too loud or is that fine? It's okay? Okay. All right. Louder? Could be louder. Okay. There's some echo here on the stage. Okay. So, all right. Let's see whether I can manage to speak a little bit louder. So, okay, as I said, so it's not just about reactualizing Marx, it's about finding access to the futures of the critical endeavor that Marx started. In doing so, we are continuing a new open engagement with the Marxist tradition that has found a first important instantiation here in Berlin at the 2011 Rethinking Marx conference organized by Rai Yegi and Daniel Leuk at HU Berlin. We are very happy that the Center for Social Critique and its directors, Rai Yegi and Robin Silikatis, are our co-conspirators at the present event. So since this 2011 conference, the diversity of philosophical traditions that have developed a new interest in Marx has only increased. Whereas there was still a great majority of self-identified critical theorists at the earlier event, in the next 2 days we will be hearing from a more eclectic group of philosophers who might be identified as Aristotelian Marxists, Kantian Marxists, Hegelian Marxists, even Marxist Marxists. The fields we will be discussing span from moral philosophy to political economy, from philosophy of nature to philosophy of history, from philosophy of action to the myth of the given, from metaphysics to metaphilosophy. 3 complexes are especially on our agenda, and with them, and I want to make brief remarks on all of them, a new naturalism, a new take on ethical life, and a new understanding of critique. First, new naturalism. This discussion has a double motivation, I think, the problem of ethical naturalism and the crisis of the Anthropocene. Recent decades have seen a deep interest in various forms of ethical naturalism, suggesting that we cannot understand our existence as rational and moral beings in splendid isolation from or in violent opposition to our existence as natural beings. Rather, we are invited to understand our rational and moral existence as the form of our natural life. Key pathologies of our modern existence, it is further assumed, have to do with the fact that we fail to understand rationality and morality in this way and remain tied to an idea of the domination or instrumental mastery of our own nature. Now, in the debate about the right understanding of such a critical ethical naturalism, there has been a vital debate between competing options. An ethical naturalism of first nature, inspired by Aristotle, on the one hand, and an ethical naturalism of second nature that takes additional cues from Kant and Hegel, on the other hand. Only in the last years, there has emerged the sense that maybe Marx is offering us a third way, something I myself would like to call dialectical naturalism. The talks by Alec Hinshelwood and Sabina Bremner will address aspects of the question what type of naturalism Marx opens up in this regard. To consider Marx as a resource for our thinking, for rethinking our relation to nature, has a second motivation, one that is not limited to the relation we have to our own natural existence, but one motivated by the crisis of our collective relation to the nature that surrounds us. The escalating climate crisis and the discussions about the ways in which we have entered a new geological age, we might call Anthropocene, or maybe more appropriately Capitalocene, have made it abundantly clear that conceiving of rationality in terms of an instrumental relation or of domination and exploitation has had disastrous effects on any future we might hope to have as a species on this planet. This discussion has led to a new wave of interesting work on Marx thinking on the relation of society and nature. Whereas earlier discussions were informed by the sense that Marx remains tied to a Promethean and productivist conception of human progress, oblivious to our irreducible dependence on natural processes and equilibria, the recent discussion has attended to the various ways in which Marx analyzes the ways in which the capital mode of production is structurally prone to destroy its natural presuppositions. Capitalist production operates, as Marx explicitly says in Capital 1, I quote him, only by undermining the original sources of all wealth, the soil and the laborer. Capitalism, and I quote him again, creates conditions which cause an irreparable rift in the coherence of social metabolism and the one prescribed by the natural laws of life. Quote end. This has led to a broad discussion of the metabolic rift, or as some say, shift, between the natural and the societal metabolism, a broad discussion of Marx in the Anthropocene, and a new interest in understanding the normative power of Marx's notion of Gattungswesen. We will have a number of talks exploring these discussions and this notion of Gattungswesen in particular, as for example, Karen Ing's, and my own presentation, and I believe maybe also Rael Yegis. In addition, we'll close the conference with a panel discussion on Marx in the Anthropocene. All right, that was the first complex, new naturalism. Second complex, a new take on ethical life. Modern moral philosophy has a strong tendency to treat questions of morality and ethics in separation from economic, political, and societal issues. There has been a long-standing complaint of critical theory that a moral philosophy that operates in this way makes itself incapable of truly understanding its object of investigation and fails to address the question whether the societies we live in undermine the very conditions of possibility of moral action, so whether it might be impossible to be moral in this society. The last years have seen a new interest in Marx as a resource for overcoming this limited perspective on contemporary ethics, showing us that issues in moral theory are internally connected to the critique of capitalism. Developing this perspective at the same time involves a fresh look at Marx, who was often understood to not really care for morality and was often portrayed as proposing a reductive perspective, breaking everything down to issues of class. Exploring a deeper connection between moral philosophy and Marx's critique has given rise to three interrelated new projects, I think. A discussion on a Marxist philosophy of action, an analysis of Marxism as articulating a moral vision, and an analysis of capitalism as a form of life. First, there's a new interest in the way in which Marx's analysis of reification elucidates ways in which the capitalist form of life goes along with an inability to act in the emphatic sense of the word. And it suggests that various elements of the perspective taken in the mainstream philosophy of action actually participate in such a reified perspective that has not really disclosed the true possibility of human action. Rather than, as the cliché would have it, aiming for the demise of individual action in plan and collective, Marx's project is engaged in the rediscovery of our capacity to act with, through, and for others. This is connected, secondly, to finding in Marx not just the critique of a given economic regime and the recommendation to substitute it with a different one, but also a distinct moral vision, an inspiring conception of solidarity and social freedom. Thirdly, this transforms our understanding of the target of Marx's critique, capitalism. It's not just a certain economic regime, but rather characterizes a form of life, one in which forms of oppression along the lines of sex, gender, race, and class intersect. We will hear more about this complex, the second complex in Vanessa Wilson, Leahy's talks on Marx's moral vision and the idea of moral socialism. Let me close by mentioning one third complex, a new understanding of critique. In the philosophical discussion of Marx, it has been a very influential trope to think of Marx's mature project as an attempt to leave philosophy behind, in the double sense of leaving behind philosophical anthropology in favor of a science of society, and of leaving behind the mere interpretation of the world in favor of its active transformation. The work of recent years has questioned both notions and has stressed the ways in which the project of the mature Marx remains philosophical, and has highlighted the sense in which transformation depends upon interpretation or critique. Marx points us to an immanent connection between critique and, in this sense, immanent connection between critique and transformation. True critique cannot remain idle, concerned with an ideal world, the reality of which does not interest us. And true transformation, however, in turn cannot remain thoughtless, but has to be based in the true critique of our present. Instead of thinking of Marx as someone who has recommended to us to leave philosophy behind, he has shown us that we have not even begun to actualize philosophy. This is something that we will hear more about in the talk by Christoph Schuringer, as well as in other talks that draw on the notion of critique and societal transformation connected to it, like Amy Allen's talk tomorrow on Marx and the problem of history. I'm very much looking forward to our discussions and to learning more about this new naturalism, this new take on ethical life, and this new sense of critique that Marx may help us develop. Let me close with some words of thank you. Let me first thank the Center for Social Critique and its directors, Rahel Yegi and Robin Sedikatis, for co-sponsoring this event with us, as well as the fabulous Volksbühne, who is hosting our event. Many thanks to Sabine Zielke, who invited us to have this event at the Rote Salon, and many thanks to the big team here at Volksbühne that has made all of this possible. We are also indebted to the DFG for generously funding this event. And finally, I would like to also thank my own team, Alexei Weismüller, Isabel Sickenberger, Jonathan Dischi, Emily Mees, and Moritz Ruge, for all of their intense work. And now, without further ado, let's start the show, or rather get to work.